Hello everyone, my name is Liam Brotherton. Today, I'll be walking you through all the steps necessary to create your very own custom paint schemes slash liveries for use on the iRacing service by utilizing a free software called Gimp. Let's go ahead and get started. Head to your favorite web browser of choice, head to gimp.org, click download right here in the center, verify you are on the correct OS, for me that is Microsoft Windows, go ahead and download and install Gimp. From there, we're going to head to tradingpaints.com, create an account by linking it to our iRacing profile, click Install Downloader here in the top right. This is going to allow us to not only share our end creations with others, but for us to see their creations on our machines while we're racing. Next up, we're going to head to the iRacing UI, surf down the left-hand side, look for My Content, then click on Cars. Scroll down till you find the car that we are going to paint. For me, that's going to be this NASCAR Toyota Next Gen Camry. And go ahead and click Paint Car down here in the bottom right. This will open up a menu akin to something you might see in a console video game. It is fairly powerful, allowing you to do all sorts of things to it. However, it will not allow us to create the truly custom paint schemes we are after today. In order to do that, we're going to click this Download Template button here in the top right. This will download a file that we can open in GIMP later that allows us to create those truly custom paint schemes we're after. However, there are two things we cannot change from the template that we can only change from this menu here. One of those being these in-sim stamped numbers, like this number 10 that you see here. Or to change these, you have this little option here. You can change the font, for instance. You can change the colors, the order of the colors, so on and so forth. However, for us today, we're going to be utilizing custom numbers, so none of this stuff you see here is super important. The one that will matter, however, are these wheels. We cannot change these wheels from within the template. You have to change them from the menu here. This gives you all kinds of range, change the finish, and the color. Most real-life NASCAR teams will show up to the track with something similar to this dark gray brushed. However, today, I'm going to be rolling with a white semi-gloss because I just think it looks pretty cool. Go ahead and click Save Car Design, and we are ready to roll. Next up, we're going to go ahead and find where we downloaded the template from earlier. For me, that's in my Downloads folder. And we're going to go ahead and double click on it. You're going to need WinRAR or 7-zip in order to open this file. It's going to go ahead and open up a file. You can see this Toyota Camry Next Gen PSD. This is the file we're going to need to open in order to start painting our car. But first, let's get organized. I'm going to go ahead and head to my desktop. Feel free to place this wherever you find convenient. Click on New Folder. I'm going to call this iRacing Gimp Tutorial. And I'm going to keep all of the related files to my paint within this folder here. I will drag and drop the Toyota Camry Next Gen in there. You can utilize the Extract to pathing system as well. I just find it easier to go ahead and utilize the drag and drop method. Once the file is opened, it looks somewhat similar to what you see before you, a 2D splayed out version of the 3D model we're looking to paint. In the case of the Toyota Camry, notice the front end, rear end, left-hand side, right-hand side, deck lid, roof, and hood. In the case of, say, an Indy car, it'll look like this. Much more complicated. You notice the front nose, the halo pieces, and a bunch of aerodynamic components that may or may not be turned on depending on the configuration you are utilizing the car in sim, say short oval, road course, and super speedway. So it makes the Indy car probably the single hardest template to utilize within iRacing, and why we're going to go ahead and ignore it today. If you were to be using a GT3 car, for instance, you notice a lot of fiddly aerodynamic components, but an overall simplified structure to the painting than, say, the Indy car. For today, we're going to stick with the Toyota Camry just because it's nice and simple to understand. The next component I'll like to take a look at are the folders here on the right-hand side of my screen. Notice Custom Spec Map, Turn Off Before Exporting, and Paintable Area. They are all color-coded. To change the color, you can simply right-click on a folder, go to Color Tag, change its color. This is a helpful organizational tool, however not something I will make too much use of today. If we click on the plus icon, it will open the folder, showcasing all the sub-layers and subfolders within this larger folder. We're going to go ahead and start with the wireframe. By clicking the eye icon, it will turn on the layer. You'll notice the wireframe has outlined all of the crucial components of the vehicle so we can see where they are located. Say the hood vents, the character line of the Toyota Camry, the rear wheel arches, so on and so forth. This is incredibly crucial to keep in mind on vehicles, say like the Lamborghini, where on the left-hand side of the vehicle, you'll notice an air intake that is outlined in green. I was to say have this iRacing decal over here where this hood vent is located, and say the C was located here in the middle of this air intake, it would get deleted on the 3D model of the vehicle, and you'd only have the A here and the I here. The C would get completely deleted. Just something to keep in mind as you're painting your vehicle. Something to notice about the wireframe is that while it is helpful to keep on, it is very obnoxious in its current state. Real simple solution is to drag the opacity layer here at the top down to say about 20%. It is a much more palatable level of obnoxious and a lot easier to paint while still having the wireframe on. There's one more problem with the wireframe, is if you were painting, say, a green car or a white car, all of these lines will get covered up by the fact that it is white or green. Simple solution, while the wireframe is selected, we can go to Colors and then Colorize and change its color. Notice now we have this nice dark blue. We can change that by dragging this around and selecting whatever color we think we won't utilize while painting our car. Today, I'm going to roll with this nice blue color and click OK. So now we have a wireframe that's a lot less obnoxious and won't also blend into the background when we have white elements on our car. Next up is the mask layer. It simply outlines the sections of the car we can paint and which ones we cannot. It is helpful just to keep on while you're painting. Next up are the number blocks. These are the locations that the iRacing in-sim stamped numbers are allowed to stamp. This is helpful to keep in mind if you are going to utilize those in-sim stamped numbers, not to include, say, a decal like this Cup Series decal here inside this green box, because iRacing might stamp a number like our 10 from earlier right over top of this decal and it'll look very ugly. Additionally, if you have never painted a car, say like a NASCAR before, and don't know where the numbers should be, turning on this file will allow you to know where to put your custom numbers. Same thing applies here for the sponsor blocks. This is simply a suggestion of where you can locate sponsors on a vehicle, which I find particularly helpful when I'm working on, say, a road course car that I've never seen before. This will tell me, oh, okay, I can put logos in this region, and that's generally what most teams do in real life. If you want to make the entire car one gigantic decal, be my guest, that's the beauty of custom paint schemes. This is also where the iRacing in-sim stamped sponsors are located. However, since we're making a custom paint scheme, that's completely irrelevant. Next up is the car mandatory file. These are decals that iRacing will stamp onto the vehicle no matter what we do to this custom scheme. That will include the Toyota emblem, the headlights and taillights. As you see, turn that on and off. However, it will not include things like this front nose, this Sunoco decal, this rear diffuser decal, all of this work here. That is all a separate file that we can edit later. We're going to go ahead and click this minus option and head down to the Paintable area. By clicking the plus icon, you'll notice again a bunch of subfolders and sublayers that we can take a look at. First up is car decal. On most NASCAR vehicles, that will include things like the Sunoco decals, the rear diffuser and side skirt decals that Toyota puts on these cars. However, it will vary depending on the vehicle and how the iRacing staff break out these files. So on this instance, these Toyota decals are included, but not the blackout on the B pillar. Next up is the rear spoiler. Then we have the blackout, the aforementioned window blackout. This is the A pillar section, this is the C pillar section, and this is the B pillar section. The only way to really find out what these sections are is through experience. Say, turning off the blackout and noticing which parts of the car do and do not get affected by that. Next up are the color change logos, which are going to include these Toyota decals here at the top and these Goodyear decals here on the side of the cars. Next up is the pit board, which you'll find on pit lane, and then your pit box colors. This red is the bottom section of the pit box. This green is the top section of the pit box. Certain vehicles only have one color option, while others will have two color options for your pit box. Next up are the car patterns. These are the patterns that the iRacing menu style, console style system allows you to change. However, I'm not going to be utilizing any of these today, so I'm simply just going to right click on the folder and click delete layer. Finally, you have your base layer, which is where you'll notice this blue is located. All right, now it is time to start painting. First things first is go ahead and save the file. I'm going to go to File up here in the top left, go to Save As, or you can click Shift Control S. Find where we want to save the vehicle. For me, that's going to be in that iRacing Gimp tutorial. And then go ahead and name it and save. Next thing we're going to do is create some folders. You can do that by either right-clicking and going to New Layer Group, or you can use the bottom option here and create a new folder. For me, I'm going to name these Sponsor. I'm going to name this Design. And I'm going to name this Number. I'm also going to drag this one up here to the top. This will help us stay organized and keep the right-hand side, where all these layers are, a little less cluttered. Let's go ahead and get started with painting our car. First thing I want to teach you is over here on the left-hand side of the screen, where all of our tool options are. You have the paint bucket, the paint brush, eraser tool, so on and so forth. The next thing I want to do is go ahead and get some files, some sponsor decals that I can use while painting this car. So let's go ahead and head over to our favorite web browser. And we can go ahead and search for something, say like Tyler Reddick number. Find a file we're looking for. Go ahead and click Open Image in New Tab. And go ahead and click Save Image As. Find where we are saving all of our files. Create a new folder and call these logos. And I will save this in here. So I'll call this Tyler Reddick number 45. Additionally, we'll look up sponsor decals, say like Lidos logo PNG. You'll notice some options here. You have a white option. Go ahead and right click here. I'll open up a PNG. I'll save this in here. And say, let's go with Wikipedia. If you click on the files from Wikipedia, it'll open up this option layer here. You have some size options. You also have an SVG option. I'm going to show you what SVG files are. That is the golden goose for files that we're looking to use. However, anything above about 1,000 pixels should be fine. Go ahead and save this in there as well. Now that we are back inside the file, I'll go ahead and save by hitting Control S. And that's going to go ahead and save. Now, the next thing we're going to be talking about are colors. You'll be able to select your colors right here with your foreground and background. If we click in on one of the boxes, we can change the color by using this option here and dragging here. Say I want a green. I can go there, click OK, hit Shift B to select my bucket tool, go to the base layer, and now I can change the color of the vehicle. What you'll also notice is that green has now become a recently used color swatch. However, if I were to just, say, go right here, you'll notice this blue is not on our recently used color swatches until we actually utilize it. Then it appears. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo everything I just did there and go ahead and get started. What I want to create is a Lidos paint scheme for Tyler Reddick that has a gradient on the bottom side of the car, here on the right, left, back, and front of the car, and kind of gradually fades up into a brighter purple here at the top, then the darker purple I'm going to have here on the bottom. So what I've done is I've scoured the internet for a Lidos company image that has a gradient on it, and I want to open and utilize those colors. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control-Alt-O. It's going to open an image as layers. I can do that from the File section as well. Go to my logos where I have it saved, and this is the image I want to utilize. Go ahead and open that up. If I hit the M key or use the Move tool up here, I can drag this down so it's not being covered up here in the top. Notice the gradient that I'm looking for. In order to grab those colors, I'll hit O or use the eyedropper tool. Scroll down here to the bottom left. Grab this dark purple. I am zooming in and out with Control Scroll Wheel. I can hit X to swap these colors around. Go up here to the top and grab the bright purple. You notice neither of these colors are showing from my recently used color palette because I had not used them yet. So if I were to go to base, hit Shift B, use both these colors, now they are in my recently used colors. Now what I want to do is create a gradient. So an option would be, say, in this base tool, I could go and use FG to BG, RGB, And now I can add a gradient to the car, skewing around where it centers from, where it originates from, the angle it's coming at. If I hold control, it'll keep it on an angle. So if I want it to be straight up and down like that, let's say I want it to be, somewhere around here, where the top is stopping there, the bottom is stopping down here. I could just hit M and finalize this, but you'll notice it's only on the right-hand side of the car. And I'll have to do a lot of extra work to cut out and replicate it around the car. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to color this base with Shift B, this bright purple. Go to Design. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call this Right for the right-hand side of the car. I'm going to call this next layer a Gradient. I'm going to hit G, and I'm going to use the Foreground to Transparent option to simply add a purple to transparent, as you can tell, to transparent layer right in that same location. It will look slightly different than, say, the foreground to background version, but as you can tell, these aren't massively different. So this way, it gives me a little bit more flexibility to only have it on this section of the car. Now, say I want to delete a section of this gradient, or any design that I'm working on for that matter. All I have to do is create a selection. I'm going to do that with this box tool for now. Drag over the section I want to delete. Notice it has now outlined it, and hit Control X. It has now deleted that section. Now, if I were, for instance, to have removed this alpha channel, if I were to then hit Control X, you'll notice that instead of deleting that section, it has replaced this entire selection with my background color. Just keep in mind, if you want to delete anything, it will need to have an alpha channel. If you create a file within Gimp, it will automatically have that alpha channel available. However, when we imported this Lidos logo earlier, you'll notice that it's highlighted in white. That's because it does not have an alpha channel. So again, if I were to create a selection, say this time with a free select tool, and then hit Control X, it has deleted that section and replaced it with white rather than actually deleting it like it would if I had that alpha channel. So just keep that in mind. So now we have this gradient. I'm going to go ahead and use my select tool here to grab this section, kind of cut out this purple just so it doesn't replicate itself on the other side of the car. Again, that's Control X to delete and Control Shift A to deselect. Sorry, I did not mention that. So to deselect an option is Control Shift A. So again, I have a selection, Control Shift A, it deselects it. So I'm going to go ahead and delete some of this other stuff just to make sure it doesn't wind up on the wrong side of the car. So now we have that section deleted. What I then can do is go to Layer and Crop to Content. You can notice that the layer is only in that section. This just helps keep file size down. So you want to kind of keep doing this as you're creating layers. So the next thing I want to do is create a curve. And while I can do that with this free select tool, it's hard to keep your mouse on a nice trajectory as you're doing that. So instead, what we're going to utilize are the path tools. I'm going to click on this path tool. I'm going to create a new layer here. I'm going to call this lines. And I'm going to turn on my number blocks real quick so I can see where that number is supposed to be. Drag this down. Go to lines, and I'm going to start my original from here, end it somewhere over here. I'm going to hit Control, and I'm going to drag these little nodes out. And it's going to allow us to create a curve. So I can go down, I can go up. I can also grab those nodes from this region too. So I can have it kind of doing a compound movement, like a wave. I just kind of want a nice simple line just like this. So I'm going to kind of drag this around to there. I think that's the curve that I'm looking for, something along the lines of this. And I'm going to complete this section and hit Enter. Now I hit Shift B, make sure I have my white selected, and boom, now I have a white section. So I hit Control Shift A, and I have a white curve on the side of my car. I have a layer, crop to content, just like that. Have that selected. What I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this layer. I'm going to lock the alpha channel. I'll show you what that means. I'm going to select my dark purple real quick, and then just bucket tool. And it has only colored where that white previously was on this layer. If I didn't have this on, it would then just bucket the entire layer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this around right about here. And then I'm going to duplicate again, make another white layer, and then I'm just going to hold Control while I'm moving it. So if I go up with Control, it'll lock it to the vertical motion. If I go left and right, it'll lock it to the horizontal motion. Notice how it's only going in a straight line, versus if I'm trying to manually do that, it's very difficult. Hold Control, it'll only stay in that plane. And if I hold Control and go in a diagonal direction, it'll lock it to that diagonal direction. You can notice that in my move actual pixel values down there at the very bottom of my screen. So they're kind of staying in lockstep with each other, or if only one is changing, it's staying 0 in the other. So I'm just going to move this with that Control option. Let's see here, down just a little bit. Say about maybe two more clicks, about right there. Let's go with that. There we go. What I'm going to then do is I'm going to right click on this lines copy, go to select section, go back to my original white. With this selection, hit Control X, and now I've deleted that section. Control Shift A, I'm going to turn on that secondary white, and as you notice, we now have a cut through of this section that allows that gradient to shine through. So now we have that section there. Go ahead and delete this because I don't need it. You can only delete once you unlock certain elements of the layer. This one here, this lock, will make it to I can't move the object. And this one, I genuinely, and mean this, have no idea what it means. So lock alpha, and we have lock movement. I'll just delete that layer, and we're ready to go. I have the side of the car that I want. Let's say I want to replicate this onto the left-hand side of the car. What I can do is right-click, duplicate layer. I'll rename this one left. I'm going to come down here to the side of the car. I'm going to notice right here above this Goodyear how far I have to go until this touches that line. It's 3 pixels. Notice it's 3 pixels up. So keep that in mind. I'm going to be here to layer, transform, flip vertically. I'm going to drag this to that side of the car, using the control method to make sure I'm only going vertically. Then I'm going to scroll in here, and I'm going to go down to right where it's touching this top layer. Now remember, we need to go 3 down, and that's how you can make sure it's in the same spot on the left-hand side of the car as it is on the right-hand side of the car. Now we have the gradient we like. What I also want to do is go ahead and replicate this onto the front nose. So this is fairly simple. We go, again, duplicate, go call this front. I'm going to drag this up here. I'm going to flip it vertically again. And then I'm going to go ahead and allow this to exist right about here-ish. I'm going to go ahead and delete these white layers. And say it's probably somewhere in and around there. Select this section here so I don't have it going onto the rear bumper. Make sure I'm not grabbing that section there. Delete that. And I'm going to go ahead and use alpha to selection, crop to selection. Now we have that in the general vicinity I kind of want. We'll have to adjust this later in Sim. Hello from the future, everyone. As you can see, we got the new Camry template here. I wanted to showcase a feature that I didn't originally highlight because I didn't know it worked within Gimp. And I think it's incredibly useful, particular for painting race cars. It's called layer masks. What it allows you to do is non-destructively delete portions of a layer or layer group in order to preserve their original state. Now, that sounds really convoluted. Let me go ahead and showcase it real quick. So say this design here, I only want it on the roof of the car. I don't want it here on the right-hand side of the car. I don't want it on the left-hand side of the car. Now, of course, I could come in here and just delete these portions of it. And then there we go. It's only on the roof and this little bit of the rail section here, and I could delete that as well. However, what if I wanted to do this non-destructively in order to keep the original full state of this layer? What I can do is just select where I want it to be. So say through this section here, go ahead and select that. So I got my selection. I can right click on the layer go to Add Layer Mask, go from Selection, Add, and just like that, it has non-destructively deleted all the sections in the areas we didn't want it to be. Now, what we can do is then disable this layer mask and it'll come back, or we can straight up delete the layer mask, and now we have the full state of the original layer. Now, this isn't amazingly useful. I think where this showcases itself being really helpful is in layer groups. So say we have a layer group with a bunch of different designs on it, say like this one. And I only want these white lines to show up on the left-hand portion of the car, not on the deck lid, not on the roof, not on the A-pillar, not on the rear bumper, front bumper, C-pillar, none of that. What I can do is simply trace where I want them to be. So quickly jump around the left-hand portion of the car here. And there we go. Tracing around, down, making our selection, coming to the layer, right-clicking, adding a layer mask from selection, and there we go. It is now only on the left-hand portion of the car, while preserving all of the original detail that this layer group had. So if I ever wanted to, for any instance, change something, boom, I still have everything right there, but I can continue on with the rest of my design, not having all of these pieces in my C-pillar, my front end, my rear end. Anyway, just wanted to jump in and showcase that. Thank you guys. And we'll make another one for the rear bumper back. So again, we'll kind of drag this over here somewhere. And it'll probably need to be somewhere in and about there. Now this section here is a cutout of the section that is right here on the Toyota Camry. It's one of the only cars that does this, so just keep in mind that if you want to put a decal in this section, you have to put it here. And the colors as well are different. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a new layer, inner bumper, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint this white. Nice and simple way to cut out the hassle. Again, layer, crop to selection. That way I have that just there. So now I have a gradient on all sides of the car, and I have a little design element where I like it. Now say I want to continue this sort of design up onto the front, I could make that again, going to the path tool, grabbing, kind of continuing this sort of design element, or again, just grabbing one of these files, say the left one, deleting the gradient out of it, bringing it up here into the front layer, dragging it up here, flipping it around, and now it kind of looks like it continues up into the front of the car. So I'll leave that there just so we can kind of get a reference as we go into the car later. So now we have a general design. Now let's go ahead and add some sponsors to it. This is really simple. Control-Alt-O. It'll open up your logos. A PNG is real simple. You just open it up. Boom. There you go. It's on the car. An SVG file, as I mentioned earlier, is a little different. This is the Lidos one here. If I were to double click on it, it's going to bring up this little option. This allows us to render it however large or small we would like. Say I want to make it 5,000 pixels. I can make it 5,000 pixels big. Right there, 5,000 pixels. Hit Shift S, it'll allow us to scale the image, which you can see right here at the top. You can also select it there. At the rotate tool, just Shift R, so I can do that. Rotate this around, so on and so forth. All of your tools here. 3D transform, you can have it to where it kind of looks like it's laying on its side, so on and so forth. All kinds of tools here in the top. Shear, which allows you to kind of angle the logo. So what I'm going to do is have this white logo. I'm going to duplicate it real quick and hide that other one. And hit Shift S, and I'm just going to downscale it real quick to the size that I want. Oh, little too small. Let me go ahead and grow that real quick. Oh, right. It looks like garbage, doesn't it? So this is what happens when we use PNG, or they call them rasterized images, is that once you downscale them, you cannot upscale them. So up here, this looks great. It's huge and it looks great. However, if I go along, downscale it, then rescale it, it looks like trash. So keep in mind, you only want to downscale and rotate an image once. So if I keep rotating something a bunch of different times, it'll start to lose some of its quality. So you want to keep your movements to a minimum. So on the right-hand side of the car, I'm going to rotate this 2 degrees while it's still big. Hit rotate. They'll tend to align with the character line of the Toyota Camry. I will hit Shift S, and I will hold Control while downscaling it, which allows me to grain in both sides. Get this where I kind of like it. I'm going to go, somewhere in around here. I do like that. But this is going to get cut off, and I'll fix that here in just a second. I'm going to grow this just a little bit more, and I'll just go ahead and hit Scale, right where I want it. I'll grab a Select tool, go ahead and duplicate this layer. I'm going to select this Lidos, and hit Control X. Then I'll hit this one down here, hit Control I, which is going to invert the selection, and hit Control X again. It looks like nothing happened. If you notice, if I turn off this layer, it's only the Lidos text, and this layer here is only the little arrow. This will allow me to then downscale this a little bit further so it better fits in this little window. I'll grab this, drag it along a little bit. That looks a little bit better. I've kept this outside of this box so I can put the 45 in it later. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer. I'll drag these in here. Now that's all one layer. So now I can move them around together. So just keep that in mind. If you want to move things together, you can create a little folder, have them together. I'm going to replicate this same thing on the left-hand side of the car and rejoin you guys. All right, now that I have replicated that onto the left-hand side of the car, same process, just here on the left-hand side of the car. I am now going to go ahead and put a logo here on the hood. So we'll go ahead and duplicate that layer, go to Layer, Transform, Rotate 90 degrees, and go ahead and downscale this till it generally is touching each side of the blue line there. I think we need to go a little bit lower, probably about there. Again, we're going to downscale this so it's touching each side. And then I'm going to hold Control and downscale it just a little bit further. That way it draws even from both sides. Now, the reason I did this versus just utilizing the crosshair and lining it up with the center line of the vehicle, you see the center line there, is because this section of the logo is higher than this section of the logo. So even though this is technically where the center is, it's going to make this S really close to the hood and this really far away in this section, which will generally tend to make it look uneven, even though it is even. So for the human eye, I tend to align it with the bottom sections, the furthest sections to the lines as possible, and then just kind of scaling in from there. So I got the front. Go ahead and just duplicate this because I know I need to shrink it. This time I am just going to center line it. As you can tell, this one's got the curve on it. This one's got the curve on it. This one's the one that's lined up with the center line of the vehicle here at the back of the car. I'm going to rotate this 180 degrees and then just center, downscale. And you want to get it within this secondary line here on the left because this is where the roof rail will reside. And I'll show you that here in a minute once we get in the car. So that looks about good. This is how real NASCAR teams do it. I'll be honest with you, I prefer running it like this. It's something that a fellow painter showed me once, and with this new roof camera, I think it gives a better angle of the rear sponsor. But for realism, we'll go ahead and do it like this. For the rear of the car, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this one more time. And then I'm actually going to lock the alpha channel again, make it a dark purple, and then downscale it into this back section. There we go. Make sure it's pretty underneath this thick line and a little bit more favorable towards this area here. Kind of keep it right about there. That looks about right. Perfect. So now I have sponsor decals on the car. Everything is ready to rock. But I want to see it in iRacing so that we can go ahead and start adjusting where these gradients are falling so they kind of line up on the sides. I'm going to hit Control S to go ahead and save. And now let's go through the process of getting this car into the iRacing UI so we can look at it. So looking at the iRacing UI, we go back to that My Content Cars, click on the car, go to Car Model. It's going to go ahead and load up the car in this UI. However, it does not have the paint scheme on it yet. In order to do that, we'll go back to Gimp, hit Control Shift E, which is again accessible through the File option, Export As. And we're going to go find our Documents folder our iRacing folder, paint. You can see this all here at the top. Find the car we are painting. This for me, stock car is Toyota Camry 2022. And then I'm going to type in car underscore num underscore 399417. For me, that is my user ID. Wanted to splice in really quickly and show how to find that user ID because I think it'd be very confusing for me to wait for forever. All you have to do is on the iRacing UI, come here to your helmet, click on it, go to account. It'll be right here at the top. For me, that is 399417. Really, really simple. So that's how you find it. And then you'll go ahead and hit export. What that has now done is placed our design here within the real 3D modeled car. You see the decals that we put on it, the white rear end, which does not look good, so I think I'll go ahead and get rid of that. As we scroll around the car, you can see all the things we worked on. We can notice that the wireframe and all of the other junk is still on the car. Again, that's why this says turn off before exporting. Just turn that off, hit Control E, now that we already have the path selected. See, it's just a simple export, and boom, it's updated. And just like that, we can pan around the car, seeing all the details. As you notice, that this rear bumper, I need to bring the gradient a little higher up because as that seam line shows, it doesn't look quite right. So I'll go back to my Gimp layer. I'll go back to here. I'm going to turn off that front end because I don't think it looks very good at all. The back, and I'm going to grab this gradient layer. And I'm just going to move it up by, say, 40 pixels and see what happens. Hit Control E, go back to iRacing. That was too high, so let's drag it down a little bit. Control E. Need to keep going. Control E. That's looking pretty good. I can't really see a difference. So I think that's right about where I want it. So I'm going to leave it right there. Go to the front of the vehicle and just look around, see if anything looks too goofy. I think it looks pretty good. I think we are pretty good on that front. And let's go ahead and turn off this, since we did not like that. Export, see what that looks like. Again, not great. All right, so after some thinking, I've decided that nothing's really going to look good here unless it just matches the gradient of its surrounding areas. So we'll go ahead and show you how to do that. We'll head back to our Gimp layer. I'm going to turn off color change logos, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn off before exporting. Scroll back down to my back bumper. I'm going to right click and do new from visible. What this has done is basically copied the entire image as it is right now to this layer. So what I can do is then turn on everything again. If you notice, if I were to drag this back up above the color change logos, notice they all disappear because it's a physical copy of what was there when we made this layer. The reason we've done this is so we can preserve the exact state of this region of the car so we can move it down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab exactly this region. I'm going to go to select, grow. I'm going to do maybe like by 30. It's going to grow that image real quick. Hit Control I, Control X, hit Control Shift A, go to layer, cut to content, and I now have a copy of that region of the car that I can move. So because it was 30 pixels, I'm going to go right here and move up by 30 pixels, 30 pixels. There we go. I'm going to delete this section of the gradient real quick. Do it with the tool real quick so I don't wind up cutting into this section. Delete that. There we go. Go back, hit Control E. Just like that, we have matched the gradient from this region to that region, even though they are on two separate parts of the car. All right, I'd say it's time to go ahead and get Tyler Reddick's number on this vehicle. So the way we're going to do that, I'm going to hit Control O. So it's just an open image, not open image as layers. So open. Go to this logos and go to that number that we saw earlier. Go ahead and select that. What you've noticed is that we've gone ahead and opened a brand new image, the thing we saved earlier. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this tool here, the fuzzy select tool, and just go ahead and turn up my threshold and select this white region here. I'm going to hold shift, see that little plus mark come up, and grab this here. What this has done is selected these colors, this region of color, based exactly where it is currently. If I were to then select this wider region, you'll notice it has selected that wider region. If I were to turn down the threshold a bunch and select here, you'll notice it's only kind of selected similar colors. As I got too green, it's not selecting that anymore. So that's where the threshold comes in. Higher the threshold, the more likely it is to just grab everything. Since it's a white on black transition, we can keep that threshold pretty high. Again, hold shift so that we grab both. Create a new layer. I'm going to call this 45. Go to shift B, bucket tool, and look at that. We have a 45 cut out. We go ahead and crop to selection. Now, we have a 45. If we wanted to keep the black, what I'd highly recommend in this situation is then to create a new layer. We'll just call it 45 again. Grab the white, grab the black. And again, I'm just holding shift while I'm doing this, so it's keeping everything together. Grabbing this inner black as well. Making sure it's all nice and copied. Everything's feeling good about itself. And then we can go ahead and come up here and then just knock it to be in black. That way, you can change the outline color. We come here to this lock alpha to whatever color you like. So now it's purple. I can change it to being a bright blue, so on and so forth. In the same way, I can change this intersection to being whatever color I want. Now, again, say I don't have an outline. I want to create an outline. You can just alpha to selection, create a new layer, go to select, grow by, say, 10 pixels, and now we have a border. And if I were to copy that in there, boom, I have a border. But you'll notice that it rounds off the corners of the growth. Now, this is something you can come in and manually fix, of course, by manually coming in here and kind of copying this region and being like, all right, I think that's about right. Boom, I got an edge. But it is very tedious and takes a very long time. So just keep in mind, if it already has a border, highly recommend just sticking to it and building out your layers in this way. That way you have a changeable file. What we can then do is just create a little layer here, call this 45 again, drag these both in here, and that way you can move the entire 45 around or edit it all together. So I can rotate this thing, I could skew this thing to being a forward-leaning number, so on and so forth. Now, in the case of something like this, where we're only got the rearward slant, the right-hand slant, that is, and say I want to match its front slant, what I can do is I can duplicate this, go to Layer, Transform, Flip Vertically, and now I have the exact angle that I'll need in order to match it. So I'll go to Shift-H, which is that shear value. I'll just go ahead and match the angle of that 5. We'll go cropped content again. Just delete this one. Look, now we have a forward-leaning and rearward-leaning 45 that match each other's skew values. Now, if you were to, say, have a number that is completely straight up and down, then all you have to do is just match the shear values. So I skew it this way by 224. It looks like that. Or I skew it this way by 224. I can enter this in as well, 224. And it'll look the same. So you notice they're basically the same. So just keep that in mind. That's ways you can kind of get the value you like. However, by utilizing the shearing method, it'll tend to start to ruin some of the edges. The larger your file and the less you have to manipulate it, the more integrity it will maintain. So if this was a 5,000 pixel image, when I sheared it around, it wouldn't lose as much integrity as it does because it's a 1,000 pixel image. But because we're going to be downscaling it into this image, none of this artifacting is really going to matter too much. So let's go ahead and drag these over here into the car. I'm going to call this 45L. I'm going to call this 45R. That is for the direction the skew is facing. So drag this over here into this layer. Just like that, into our number file. Drag this one over here as well. And then I'm just going to separate those real quick and turn those off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this R1. I'm going to rotate this by about 0.7. hit Control S, and then just go ahead and downscale this bad boy into this region of the car. Kind of aligning it somewhat with what we got. You know, turn off that, scale it down a little bit. It looks a little goofy, kind of drag it down. Maybe a little bit this way. Feeling pretty good about it. Go ahead and hit scale, and boom, we have a number. So if we were to, again, turn off the export, hit Control E, go back inside the car, now we have a 45 on the car. Just like that, nice and simple. So we'll go ahead and redo that on all the other sections of the car, and I will come back to you guys. All right, I now have the number and all the locations that I'd like it to be in. So I hit export. I've gone ahead and matched the directional skew, so I have it as a rearward facing skew here. Matched it all the way around the car to my heart's desire. Notice here at the front, the rear, and then if you notice here on the Gimp layer, the pit board, and also on the inner name rail that's custom to iRacing. Now, something I would like to do here is I'm not sure I'm overly sold on this black outline. Maybe I kind of just want it to be white to match how this doesn't have a black outline. But I also want it to stand out from this white section here. This is actually a fairly simple thing we can do. What we're going to do is we're going to come in here, go ahead and hit save. All right. And then we're going to go ahead and turn this off, turn the numbers off, and then even turn off the lines. Turn off those lines. Yep, just like that. And then we are going to create new from visible. And then I'm just going to kind of select only this region here through about there. And just Control I, Control X, boom. I only have that region there like we did earlier. Okay, pretty cool. Now we have this little layer. I'm going to call this just an outline. I'm going to drag this up here into this number layer. And then I'm going to go find these regions where this gradient was. So say this one. I'm going to turn off this black layer. I'm going to drag this up here. Duplicate this real quick so I don't lose it. I'm going to grab this section, come over here. I'm going to grow it by, say, maybe about 5 pixels worth. And then I'm going to do is just Control I, delete. There we go. So if I go back down here and I were to turn on all those layers again, you'll notice that I have a little outline. A little outline of what I would desire. So unfortunately, it's kind of cutting through a little bit here and there. What we can do is we can come back in here, new layer. What I'm going to do is just kind of see where that's at. I'm going to just add a little bit this way, kind of up. Let's do this. Go that way, around that way. Select all of that region. All right, we're going to combine it with this one. Duplicate here. We're just going to alpha selection. Again, boom. You notice? Boom. There we go. We have a gradient cutout that is non-destructive. So I can turn this off and on. One way you could do this, again, is just to grab this alpha selection, come down here to this left, and actually physically delete these lines here. But this is a very destructive method because I turn off the number, well, now that's still there. So I like to keep it as non-destructive as possible so that they are completely separate entities. So I'm going to go ahead and match this for this side of the car, and then just turn off the black outline for the other regions of the car. Now that we're back in iRacing, you can see I have an outline around my numbers that I much prefer versus the black outline that I had before. And that is completely non-destructive. Now, mind you, with this method, I can't exactly move these numbers anymore without risking this looking too strange as it kind of skews up and down and might vary the gradient. But since I was pretty satisfied with where they were, I feel pretty good about that. And again, this is a rare circumstance where I'm wanting to replicate the gradient from underneath. Up here, I simply just turned off the black outline, and now all the black outlines are gone. So I'm trying to cut through this non-destructively, so we were able to do that. So now I'm feeling pretty good. I want to add some details. I want to make these roof rails all white. I want to make the rear spoiler white. I think I want to add a little bit of a white lip to the front nose here. So let's go ahead and do that. Heading back inside Gimp, I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder. We'll just call this Extras. I'll call this Rails. I'm going to select white real quick. Grab my lasso tool. I'm going to add a section up here. Again, Shift B, doing that. Now this is a little too high, clearly, so we'll drag this beneath the car decal. Oop, I didn't mean to cut this just yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new layer. Okay, I'm going to merge down, and now it's the full width again. Come down here to this section. We will add a white layer there. And that should be good. So go ahead and cropped content, feel good about that. For spoiler, I'll lock the alpha channel, paint that white. And then for the front nose, what we're going to do is go ahead and just create a splitter layer. I'm going to drag this above the car decal. And then I'm just going to do this section here. Now, it's only going to paint where this black is currently. Just keep that in mind. As I paint there, got selection. And head back, you'll notice the kind of white outline there is only in that one zone. So what I might do instead is leave that black and just add a little white box here to the bottom of the car. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll turn off the splitter layer, and I'll just go to the front layer again. I'm just going to go create, we'll just call it splitter again. Technically it's more of an air dam, but whatever. Make a little box, kind of grow it a little bit. Come along through here. Feel pretty good about its size. Paint that, and then go ahead and go back. I think we'll just shrink this down just a little bit more. It's a little bit of white there at the bottom, but nothing too crazy. So I'm feeling pretty great about this. I think the only things we need to do now are a few extra touches, like a 2311 logo here at the back, the front, and Tyler Reddick's name rail, which I will go find online and get installed on the car. And with that, we are almost done with this car. I've added the 2311 decals, the Tyler Reddick decal to the car. The only thing really left for us to go ahead and do is delete this 75th anniversary logo, since NASCAR is almost done with that. Change this Goodyear decal to white. And probably go ahead and change the pit board as well. Let's go ahead and do that. It's heading back to Gimp. We're going to scroll out and we're going to head down to the color changeable decals. I'm going to select only the Goodyear logos here. Make sure I have that alpha channel locked and go ahead and select that. Again, something you can do here to make your life easier is to turn off that alpha lock, duplicate these two layers, select the Goodyear section, hit Control X, hit Control I, and hit Control X again. That way we can have these two layers separated so that they're a little easier to deal with. Only the Toyota section and only the Goodyear section. Just in case you want these to be two different colors, for instance, and don't want to have to, do the whole color select every single time. For the pit box, what I tend to do with these is go ahead and fill it with just white, select this box here, and then maybe shrink it by about 20, and then just go ahead and we'll do like maybe a gradient again in here from corner to corner with the FG to GB right there. Feel pretty good about that. And I'll probably shrink down the number just a little more, just so it fits. That way it's a little easier to see with that white box coming down pit lane. We'll change the pit box colors to probably this dark purple and the white. So we'll go dark purple and white for the top. And we are feeling pretty good. On some vehicles, you can change the roll bar color. On this next gen, you can't, but it would be right here in this section there. We are feeling pretty good. Keep in mind, you can turn off these side skirts. Sorry, my bad. And the Chevy and Ford don't come with these side skirts. So you'll kind of have to match this design as it goes down here or just black them out. So by just, kind of cupping through here and making a black layer where the side skirt resides. In this case here, if you're wanting to match these two layers, you'd probably have to offset this section here. So by duplicating it, just offsetting it a couple pixels this direction, because it'll kind of kink as it goes through this section here, which is completely empty. This section here is completely empty, so it'll kind of kink this direction. So in order to kind of keep it straight, as it were to transition down here onto the side skirt, you'd have to kind of move it just a little bit. It's fairly simple though, just a little call out for all my brothers at home. So we'll go ahead and delete these little 75th anniversary logos since we are past that in NASCAR history. It's 2024. And we are feeling pretty great. That is everything you need to know in order to make a paint scheme on iRacing. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and get this thing uploaded to Trading Paints and get it ready to rock. So let's go ahead and do that. What we're going to do is we're going to turn off before exporting. We're going to hit Control-Shift-E again. Go back to our dock. And we're just going to call this whatever we want. We'll call this Tyler Reddick Lidos Custom 45.tga. Hit export. Go back in here, turn off the numbers. Do this again. I'm going to call this Sim Stamped Numbers. With that, we are done with Gimp. Entirely done. Now you notice we never touched this custom spec map. That's because this is an entirely separate skill set that I'd rather teach in a separate video just because this one's already getting pretty long. So let's go ahead and head over to Trading Paints and do our final little touch-ups. Now that we're on Trading Paints, we're just going to scroll down to the car that we did paint. Go to NASCAR Cup Series Next Gen Toyota Camry. And we're just going to upload these two files. Choose New Paint. And we're just going to go scroll and find that. So for me, that is going to be, again, on my desktop. So we're going to scroll, find my desktop. Go for Sim Stamp number first. Go ahead and place that in on the Sim Stamped number version here. And then the custom number version, you don't have to enter this in. I don't think it makes any difference. And go ahead and upload that. From here, everyone will see this exact car ready for you to use everywhere you go. Now, if you want to upload to the showroom, you can also do that. It's the same process, but that way everyone else can utilize your paint schemes as well. So if you're, say, for instance, creating a Tyler Reddick paint scheme and want to put it on the showroom for others to use, say like I have for all of these other paint schemes that I've done in the past, these Hollywood video cars and all this, you can upload them to the showroom, which would be here. And you can just go ahead and select here and go to Community and select the vehicle, me Toyota Camry, type in the name and the details and everything else, throw in some pictures, the number font that you identify with it. In this case, it's a custom number version, so we just select that, type in the 45, so on and so forth. So that's how you get it up onto the showroom as well. So I hope with this tutorial, you have a general understanding of how to get a basic scheme together with your name, with your decals on it, your number, using a free software instead of having to pay money for it. So thank you guys for watching today, and I will see you later, probably for that spec map tutorial. Thank you guys.